To another episode of Rational Discourse Weekly. This is episode 37, filmed on Wednesday, May 21st, 2014. I'm William Garrison.
And I'm Mike Aune.
This week we talk a little bit about Google and kind of how that deals with privacy, blasphemy laws, free speech.
Yeah, free speech on the web and how that bleeds into real-world scenarios. And then we touch on the recent election in India and sort of how the potential mixture of religion and politics over there should be important and is important to atheists and secularists everywhere. Yay.
So stay tuned.
That'd be good if you did. Thanks. We're starting.
All right.
Start the intelligent conversation. Let us go forth into the world and speak our minds. It'll be glorious.
Yeah, so one of the things I wanted to talk about tonight, in addition to Bud Light Lime and its gloriousness...
it's not glorious. It's just what he has. That's what I have to suffer through. And I suffer greatly.
Enjoy responsibly.
Is that even possible?
In addition to that...
Buying it was irresponsible.
Anyway. Google has been blamed recently for an interesting string of privacy-related cases. And basically, they've been put on the back burner or have entered the public discussion of what should Google, not only what should they be responsible for, but what should they do to protect the rights, the privacy of someone that's flamed, bashed, whatever you want to call it, on Google. The interesting discussion comes if I posted something demonstrably false about Michael, and Michael previously didn't have a lot of Google ranking. He wasn't active on social media, and no one famous shared his name. Then I could...
All of those things you just said are true, actually. Right. That's not a hypothetical. That's just reality.
I could exploit those facts and have him ranked higher and say something, or, my posts about him be ranked higher and say something
you can come
that he's
to
a bad
dominate
person.
the view of me on the web with a negative or false post. Which is that a violation of my rights?
Right. So that got me thinking. I was actually listening to a tech podcast. Again, you might be wondering why I'm talking about Google in the first place. I was listening to a tech podcast and it made me think about the topic of blasphemy because they were discussing the First Amendment rights that we have here in the States. That basically it's the internet. We like to keep it open and free and for everyone to use. And outside of direct libel, you want to be able to pretty much say and do as you please on the internet. You don't attacking someone directly. There is that line, and we have laws in place.
You can't threaten overtly, and you can't lie with the intent of lying so as to slander someone.
Yeah. So we have laws in place for that. But obviously, when you talk about blasphemy laws, the reason why it came to mind is talking about the First Amendment and countries that don't have the same First Amendment protections that we do. And the reason why this case came up is because it's been a situation that's come up in past years internationally.
Well, it was originally brought for, not in this context, but it's snowballed because the problem is where do you draw the line? So it was actually a Spanish gentleman, who, if you Googled him, it would come up about like a bank foreclosure or like an auction on a home that he had sold in like 2000 or 1998, I think.
Yeah.
And he was like, look, that's like ancient history and I don't want that out there. I have a right for that to be forgotten, which is the idea. It's a right to be forgotten. But the problem is, pragmatically, where do you draw the line? If it's just a matter of getting a request saying, this person said a thing about me or this thing that's important to me that I don't like or that I feel is false or whatever, take it down. Is it Google's responsibility to do that? Now, of course, Google has to operate in these countries. And this is in the EU. This came down from the EU's High Court, if I'm remembering correctly. And they said, the person has a right to say, take it away, and Google's supposed to comply. But first of all, it's like impossible. And on the internet, it's like whack-a-mole. Yeah, you might take down one link, and it's going to multiply. Because if it's anything worth knowing or talking about, people are going to copy. And
yeah.
So it's stupid. I mean, I get the intent, and it's not going to work. So, but then the problem goes back to what you were saying, which is Well, let's say that I call you out, or let's say you're a shady preacher. We don't have any of those in the States. Not any of them are driven by money or power or wealth. All those people you see on Channel 2, they really mean it in their heart of hearts. When they ask you to put the dollar in the basket, because Jesus wants you to. It's true, he does.
Jesus only takes U.S. dollars, so...
Yeah, don't send him, like, the yen or something. He's not going to... What? He can't do anything with that. Anyway, so then it was like, then you draw this line, and then it sort of becomes a weird, roundabout, unintentional sort of... Does this sort of cover, like, blasphemy? Because to a lot of people, that's as important to them as slander on their own name. And it's not that this has happened yet, but it's so obvious a consequence, and it doesn't seem far-fetched at all, that it's that specter of the blasphemy law just is like floating right there, and you can feel it.
Yeah, and we've talked about blasphemy laws in the past, why there doesn't exist one in this country, why there shouldn't be, because the right to free speech is amazing. It's the reason why we can do a podcast like this without fear of our lives from our government.
That's true. There's still individuals that wouldn't maybe like
someone could want to kill us because we do a podcast, but that is highly unusual and unlikely. But
it's not systematic, persecution by our government, which is really what we want to avoid.
And when you talk about the power of free speech, it's because when something goes beyond the realm of questioning or discussion, like the validity of religion, which is something we talk about quite frequently.
Yeah.
We think it's important to keep that open because that's the reason why, people can live their lives, can question things like abortion laws and, gay rights and any of the topics that we talk about. A lot of the kickback that we can give as atheists directly correlates to the fact that we're atheists.
Yeah.
Basically, if the counter argument to something like abortion laws, for example, is that the only person that can take away life is God. Well, we don't believe in a God, so we don't think he's the only person that can take away life.
And then you say, "Watch!" And you grab their kid, and and you go, "See, I told you."
Now, I'm not saying that's the only argument for or against abortion. I'm just using it as an example of.
Oh, let's open that. Let's go down that rabbit hole.
Let's open that can of Bud Light Lime. But anyways...
it's about as enjoyable as...
I thought it was interesting that besides the fact that the internet has been around for so long, that discussions like this are cropping up, I think they're important discussions because it's important for the average person in the world, the public, that isn't techie, that doesn't,
Well, these consequences, again, like it starts off with this sort of innocuous case, so it seems, but then the consequences creep. And there's already plenty of places where things like blasphemy laws are in place, and it's terrible because it doesn't allow people to live their lives as they choose, which I think both of us will say, short of your way of life literally harming another. Like, I get that you want to be a murderer, but no, you can't be a murderer.
So another reason why I brought this up is because blasphemy laws would prevent something like Draw Muhammad Day, which was yesterday. I'm not sure if you were familiar.
I missed it this year, apparently.
So Draw Muhammad Day started in 2010, according to Wikipedia. But it was basically to scoff in the face of the general idea that, and there's been a South Park episode about it. There's been a lot of stuff in the news over the past decade about it. But basically that Muslims don't believe, not all Muslims, I should think of how to word this, but
Islam says that iconography can lead to idolatry, and that's the worry. And so graven images are forbidden, basically, because the focus should not be on the image, but on the object of the image. Just like you shouldn't make a statue of God, because then your focus will become the statue and not God. It's distracting. So I get there's a weird sort of logic to that, and that's fine. But then the idea is that I think it actually really the outrage came back for the backlash to the cartoons and stuff that happened a few years back, where I think they were Swedish or Dutch. No, they were Dutch. cartoonist.
Yeah.
Drew some pictures of Muhammad, and they were a little scandalous. Like one of them, his turban is a bomb and stuff like that. But they were political commentary, and there were death threats, and the newspaper like pulled them, and all sorts. And apologies were issued, and many people, I think, had the right response, which is whoa, 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 whoa. I wasn't violent. I wasn't slandering you. I wasn't targeting you. I was slandering an idea with which I do not agree. So why are you going to blackmail me with threats of violence and thuggery to not say what's on my mind? And so then the response is, of course, well, if you're going to react this strongly to someone drawing a picture of Muhammad, then we'll all draw a picture of Muhammad and you can deal with it. Now, it's a little childish, but I respect it. Fine, do your thing. I'm not going to draw one because I don't care enough. But it's a thing that should be allowed to exist in the world because ideas do not have protection. They should not have protection because anytime you stop being able to analyze or criticize an idea, that's dangerous because that's when you get into sort of dogma. Unquestioned ideology rarely leads to good things, I think history has shown us, especially of that type.
Yeah, and I think this applies to a lot of things. Political cartoons, so politics, something that's almost as divisive as a religion to some people. Any topic shouldn't have protections on ideas. I'm more than happy for political cartoons to exist, even if they directly disagree with my viewpoints. Yeah. Because I might still get a laugh off them. It might make me sit back and think about why I agree with a certain, ideal.
But that might be part of it, because it makes you think.
Yeah.
And people, I think especially the people who actually know, maybe feel that their belief is a little shaky, they, rather than analyze the idea, will double down on the idea. And so then any attack on their belief is essentially an attack on them, because you're questioning their intellectual integrity. Basically, you're saying this thing that you hold dear to your heart is false, and that is perceived in some cases as you're an idiot for believing it. And I get it. I mean, no one likes to be challenged. No one likes to be proven wrong. I don't. I know you don't. No one does. Who would? It makes no sense. It's like getting intellectually bitch slapped, and it's not pleasant. That being said, in an environment where you can foster the dialogue to challenge beliefs and try and get a little bit closer to the truth, we all benefit. It's better for everyone to be able to do these things. And so anytime that there's an encroachment on the right to question things and say things, no matter the topic, really. I mean, again, you can't go as far as threatening. I understand that. I can't send you repeated emails saying I'm going to bash your skull in tonight. Like, at some point, I've crossed the line from free speech into threat, and that's fine. You can't yell fire in a movie theater.
Bomb on an airplane.
Protected speech under the Constitution, which I think so far has been a pretty reasonable way of judging what works and doesn't. Though, of course, that's sort of a U.S. centrist view. But in any case, you need to be able to question. You need to be able to attack ideas. That's how we move forward. That's how we all get better. And also, the ability to dissent is hugely important for just being able to live the life that you want to live and not have to bow down. Because imagine being forced to go along with a system of beliefs you do not hold dear, that you completely disagree with. It's horrible. I mean, and we deal with it here in a very sort of roundabout way. I mean, you get like kids who are afraid to come out as gay or bisexual or transgendered or whatever because of the consequences of the way people react to them. And it's like, we can't just accept that you live a different life, it's not better or worse or whatever. It's the same thing with me being able to believe what I want to believe and argue for my viewpoint over yours. Don't stifle me as an individual because of something you believe. Because at that point, your belief is oppressing me. And oppression is wrong. You can put me on the record as saying, oppression is not good. Please don't oppress me. So, Yeah.
So yeah, I think it boils down to we don't want government, any level or type of government, to be playing the thought police. That's what, in movies.
But also socially, like, I don't want that to become a social norm, because at that point it's de facto law. If I'm going to be ostracized, now we're still dealing with tension, and there's always going to be groups of people who don't like what other groups of people say, and that's fine. But yeah, it's just such a bad idea. The consequences are pretty much only negative, because if you're not like in the majority and you don't toe the line, it's going to be a negative experience for you. We want people to be happy, or at least have an attempt to be happy, a chance to be happy, because we're loving people. I mean, just look at that face. It's horrible. I'm sorry for that. We could black that out. No, just the one you made. Okay. Not your general face.
General face. Gotcha.
General face is fine.
Thank you.
Anyway, one thing I want to touch on before we move on to the end of this is there was an election recently in India. Largest exercising of democratic rights in the history of mankind. Like 500 million people voted, I think, out of like the 800 million or so who were registered. So more than our country's population by like 50%.
Yeah, we
know. Kind of a big deal.
Yeah.
But the man who was elected was a Hindu nationalist, Modi, Narendra Modi. I'm probably slaughtering that, and I apologize for that. But yeah, so he campaigned on a platform, very populist, a toilet in every home, I think was actually one of his campaign slogans. But he's pretty right-wing. He actually came up through like a hardline Hindu nationalist organization that actually has some militaristic tendencies and things like that. And he very wanted to be a Hindu monk at one point, and is overtly he's part of the Hindu Nationalist Party. The BJP is the initials for it. The Bharatiya Janata Party. Wow, I am the whitest human that ever lived. Anyway, point is, the world's largest democracy, 1.1 or 1.2 billion people at this point, I think, just elected an overtly Hindu nationalist individual. And for those who don't know what nationalism is, it's basically the advancement of your people sort of over and above everyone else. It's a very like India first mindset. Same thing with National Socialism. That was sort of a Germany first thing. Everyone sort of is a little nationalistic, it seems, in their politics, but this sort of puts that front and center. So when you add that with religious overtones in a country that's 70 to 75%, maybe even higher, maybe up towards 80% Hindu. Yeah. It's a little worrisome. Minorities are already expressing concern, because when he was the governor, or I should say the chief minister of his state, basically in India, about a decade ago, there were some riots that had religious divisions at their core, it seems. And I think over 1,000 Muslims were killed during the riots. It was a pretty big deal at the time, and didn't end up obviously overshadowing this too much. But people are worried about the religious overtones to this election, and that he might steer India, which has been a secular democracy, towards a more Hindu-focused or Hindu-centric state, which could be bad for the religious minorities in that country. And it's just, it sort of shows that everywhere, even in places that maybe you don't suspect or that you don't think are maybe important to you, their events are impactful, because 1/6 of the world's population, basically, is now potentially leaning towards a more religiously oriented government and society. And for those of us who don't agree with that intermingling of religion and politics, and who see that as a dangerous thing, we should keep our ear to the ground. We should be aware of these things.
Yeah, and the problem globally is that the people of India, the people that may agree with Hindu nationality, that with any decisions that he decides to make in the future, whatever, they're still a part of the international community.
We are a global community at this point. This stuff matters to us.
The fact that you could visit there, that they could move here, there's any number of ways that we could directly interact with them. We share the internet with the entire world, so except maybe North Korea, they're kind of a weird.
Well, there's also just think about it. Pakistan is obviously heavily Muslim. And that influences politics and stuff very much. They're very antagonistic and have been with India for basically since the separation of the countries because of how things went down. They've fought many, many times. They're both nuclear-powered or nuclear-armed countries. Well, now if you throw a nationalist and a competing religious ideology into the political situation, that could have serious consequences for the region, which can impact us. Obviously none of this has happened. The gentleman, I believe, was declared prime minister on Monday. So it's not like anything has happened. I'm not trying to doomsay or anything. I'm just saying these are the sort of issues that it behooves us to be aware of.
Yeah.
And to understand that, vigilance is important as far as...
Yeah, he could be the greatest prime minister India's ever had. We don't know.
He could moderate himself from here on out.
Right.
Maybe he was a little harder or more harshly spoken on the campaign trail than he'll prove to be. Hope so. Maybe it'll never come up. Nothing will happen. India just moves on and up in the world, and everyone wins. Cool. But I am very wary of any sort of mixture of religion and politics because I'm not going to be part of that group by definition as an atheist. Not going to agree with whoever is in charge if they're religious. And so, I'm sort of on the losing end of that situation at any point. And they're going to be atheists in India. They're going to be dissenting minority religious persons who are going to have to live in that environment, should it go that way. And I think that's just a all-around bad thing. So very much hope that India does not go that route, because that would be a shame. So... Anyway, I think that's
all we've got this week. Thanks again for joining, and we'll talk to you next time.
Yeah. I don't actually know how to salute. I know I do this thing.
Salute your shorts.
I do it the British way. Palm out. Yeah, the U.S. does it in a lot of European countries. Actually, I think most countries do it. Palm out.
Interesting.
Yes. There's some sort of stuff about that.
All right, this is episode 37.
37.
Are you ready to do an intro?
Sure.
So we can wrap this up pretty quickly.